If you've been strong all day, this story is for you. Outside, the rain has already begun, steady, unhurried, as if the night itself is breathing. You don't have to keep holding everything together. You don't have to stay alert. You don't have to be the one who keeps going. The rain isn't asking anything of you. It doesn't need answers. It doesn't need effort. Welcome, dear one, to Whispers from the Cottage. Tonight's story is for the woman who is always strong, the one others lean on, the one who rarely leans herself. This is a gentle story about setting strength down, about letting the night and the rain carry you for a while, about remembering that you are still worthy of love, even when you are soft, even when you are tired, even when you are no longer holding everything up. So settle in, let your shoulders lower, let your breath follow the rhythm outside. The rain will stay, the night will hold you, and for once, you don't have to be strong. The rain had already begun before she arrived. Not suddenly, not loudly, just steadily, as if it had been there all along. Outside, the night was moving at its own pace, unhurried, unconcerned. Inside, nothing was asking anything of her. For the first time that day, she didn't have to respond. She didn't have to decide. She didn't have to stay alert. The rain didn't need her strength. It didn't need answers. It didn't need effort. It simply fell and kept falling. Tonight, there was nowhere she needed to be, not even on her way to becoming better, stronger, or more composed. She could arrive exactly as she was. The night allowed for slowness, for pauses, for unfinished thoughts. If something in her still felt tight, the rain didn't mind. If her breath came shallow at first, the rain stayed the same. Nothing was rushed here. Nothing was required. For this moment, for this night, she was allowed to arrive. Just settled. Warm light rested gently in the corners of the room, softening the walls, softening the edges of the evening. Outside, rain tapped softly against the window, against the roof, against the leaves nearby. Inside, everything held its place. A lamp glowed steadily. A candle flickered without hurry. Shadows moved slowly, as if even they had learned to take their time. The air felt calm, still, safe. She noticed the way her shoulders began to lower, just a little. Not because she told them to, but because they were finally allowed to. The rain continued its gentle rhythm, predictable, reassuring, nothing sudden, nothing sharp. The world outside grew softer with every passing moment, and inside the house, the quiet deepened. She didn't need to think about how long it had been since she last rested. There was no need to name it. The chair supported her without question. The floor stayed steady beneath her feet. The walls held the warmth inside, and the rain kept falling, steady and constant, doing exactly what it came to do. She could feel her breath beginning to slow, matching the rhythm outside. In, out, nothing else needed her attention. The night was already holding everything. She had always been strong, not in a way that asked to be noticed, not loudly, not dramatically. It was the quiet kind of strength, the kind that simply stayed. She stayed when things became heavy. She stayed when others grew tired. She stayed when silence stretched too long. It became natural, almost invisible. Strength wasn't something she chose each day. It was something she carried without thinking. The rain outside kept its steady rhythm, unbothered by how long it had been falling. She remembered how often she was the one who held things together, not because she was asked to, but because she could. And when you can, people assume you will. She listened, she adjusted, she made space, she found words when others had none. She stayed calm when the room felt unsteady. She kept moving forward even when no one was watching. The rain tapped softly against the glass, as if nodding along. There were moments when she noticed the weight, small moments, quiet ones, a pause that lasted half a breath too long, a tiredness that settled behind her eyes. But strength had a way of smoothing over those moments, of carrying on. She learned not to ask herself whether it was heavy. The question simply didn't come. The rain didn't ask questions either. It fell and kept falling. She had been strong for so long that it no longer felt like something she was doing. It felt like who she was, and no one ever stopped to ask if that strength needed rest. The room remained still. The light stayed warm. The rain stayed constant. For now, there was no need to remember every moment, no need to trace the years. It was enough to notice the pattern. She was strong, and no one asked if that was heavy. The rain continued its gentle sound, steady and reliable, just like she had been. Strength had become a habit, not something she decided in the morning or reflected on at night. It lived quietly in the background, like breathing, like standing upright without thinking about it. She didn't remember when it began, only that it had always been there. The rain outside continued its steady presence, dropping softly against the roof, against the window, against the darkened ground below. It didn't hurry, it didn't change its mind. Neither did she. Strength showed up in the smallest ways, in answering messages, even when she felt empty, in staying calm when others felt overwhelmed, in carrying conversations forward so they wouldn't fall apart. She filled the gaps. She smoothed the edges. She made things workable. The rain tapped gently, a sound that asked for nothing in return. She learned how to keep going, even when she didn't feel full, how to offer steadiness, even when her own balance felt thin. And because she did it well, no one questioned it. It simply became expected, not demanded, just assumed. The house remained still around her, as if listening without interrupting. Warm light rested on familiar surfaces. The chair supported her weight without comment. The floor stayed solid beneath her feet. She didn't notice when strength stopped being a choice and became a reflex, a way of responding before she even realized there was another option. The rain didn't reflect on itself either. It fell because that was what it was doing tonight. Sometimes, late in the evening, she felt a quiet tiredness settle in her body. Not sharp, not dramatic, just a heaviness in her chest, a softness in her limbs. She rarely paused long enough to stay with it. Strength had taught her how to move past those moments, how to stay upright, how to continue. The rain kept its rhythm, unconcerned with progress or purpose. There were days when she wondered, briefly, what it would feel like to not be the one holding everything steady. The thought passed quickly. Strength didn't leave much room for wondering. The room grew quieter as the night deepened. Shadows stretched gently across the walls. The candle's flame stayed calm and steady. The rain continued its soft pattern, unchanged, reliable. She had been strong for so long that it no longer asked anything of her. It simply happened, and tonight, for the first time in a long while, she didn't need to decide what came next. The rain was already doing the carrying. The rain kept falling. It didn't change its rhythm. It didn't ask if this was a good moment. It didn't wait for permission. It simply continued, steady and patient, as if it had all the time in the world. Inside the house, the night settled deeper. The warmth stayed where it was. The light didn't flicker or fade. Nothing shifted suddenly. And somewhere beneath her practiced strength, something began to loosen, not in a way that demanded attention, not in a way that felt urgent, just a quiet softening, like fabric easing after being held too tight for too long. She didn't notice it at first. Strength had taught her not to look for cracks, not to listen for weakness, not to pause when things began to feel thin. She had learned how to stay intact. The rain tapped gently against the window, each drop finding its place, each sound blending into the next. She noticed her breath before she noticed anything else, not because she tried to, but because it slowed on its own. In, out, there was more space between each breath now, more room for the air to linger. She hadn't asked for that either. The rain didn't ask her to let go. It didn't suggest rest. It didn't offer advice. It simply stayed. And in that staying, something in her realized. It didn't have to keep bracing itself. She had spent so long holding everything together that she didn't remember what it felt like to stop holding, not completely, not all at once, just enough to feel the difference. The first soft crack wasn't a break. It wasn't collapse. It was the absence of effort, a moment when she didn't reach for the next task, didn't prepare for the next question, didn't steady herself for what might come. The rain kept falling, as if to say, Nothing else was coming. She felt the weight of the day settle fully into her body, not as pressure, but as truth. Her shoulders sank another inch. Her jaw unclenched without instruction. Her hands rested where they were. She didn't move them into readiness. They didn't need to be ready. The rain traced its path down the glass, each drop following another, never rushing, never stopping. She realized she wasn't listening for anything anymore. No footsteps, no notifications, no subtle shifts. In the room, there was only the sound, outside, constant and forgiving, and the quiet inside, finally allowed to exist. Strength had always kept her slightly forward, slightly alert, slightly prepared. But tonight, there was nothing to prepare for. The house didn't expect her to hold it together. The night didn't lean on her steadiness. The rain didn't need her to stay upright. It fell whether she listened or not. She felt something unfamiliar then. Not sadness, not relief. Permission. Permission to not scan the moment. Permission to not manage the silence. Permission to not carry the invisible weight she had grown used to. The first soft crack widened, not with force, but with ease, like ice melting without sound, like a knot loosening itself. She didn't think about tomorrow, didn't calculate how long this rest could last. Strength had taught her to think ahead. The rain taught her to stay. It stayed with her breath, with the warmth in the room, with the steady presence outside the window. There was no need to understand what was happening. Nothing required naming. The rain didn't name itself either. It simply continued, drop after drop, moment after moment. She leaned back slightly, just enough to feel supported. The chair didn't shift. The floor didn't move. Everything beneath her remained steady. She realized she had been holding herself upright, even when there was something beneath her, all along. The thought didn't linger. It didn't need to. The rain carried it away, the same way it carried everything else tonight. There was a softness in her chest now, a space where effort used to live. It didn't ask to be filled. It simply stayed open. The rain didn't celebrate this moment. It didn't mark it as important. It continued its quiet work, as it always had. And for the first time in a long while, she didn't resist the stillness that followed. She didn't brace herself against it, didn't rush to occupy it. She allowed it. The first soft cracks were not a failure of strength. They were a resting place, a pause wide enough to set something down. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, nothing needed to be held together anymore. The rain stayed. It didn't thin out. It didn't hurry toward an ending. It didn't change its mind. It simply continued, steady as breath, steady as time. Inside the cottage, the warmth held its place. The lamp's light rested softly on the walls. The candle remained patient, its flame a small, quiet presence. The room felt like it was waiting for nothing, And because of that, she could finally stop waiting too. She didn't notice the exact moment she began to lean, not dramatically, not as a decision, just a subtle shift, a surrender of a few small muscles that had been working longer than they ever admitted. Her shoulders softened again, her neck released, her hands stopped hovering in readiness. The chair beneath her was steady. It did not ask her to stay upright. It did not require her to perform strength. It simply supported her, as if it had been doing this all along. Outside, rain traced slow lines down the window. Each drop followed another, not competing, not rushing, not trying to be different. They fell into place. They became part of the same gentle pattern. She had spent so many days being the steady one, the one who noticed everything, the one who remembered, the one who kept track, the one who held space when others couldn't. And now, in this quiet room, she realized something without needing to think it through. Nothing was asking anything of her now. The thought was simple. It didn't need a reason. Nothing was asking anything of her now. The rain didn't ask her to answer it. It didn't ask her to explain it. It simply kept falling, steady and kind. She felt a softness spreading through her body, the way warmth spreads through fabric. When you finally stop pulling it tight, there was a heaviness too, not painful, not sharp, just the honest weight of someone who has been carrying. And the room held that weight without complaint. The air held it, the chair held it, the floor held it, the quiet held it, even the shadows seemed to hold it, moving slowly across the wall. As the candle flickered, she didn't need to fix the heaviness tonight. She didn't need to transform it into a lesson or turn it into something useful. She could simply let it be here. The rain was already doing the work of time, one drop at a time, one moment at a time. Nothing forced, nothing demanded. She breathed in, and the breath stayed longer in her chest than it had earlier. She breathed out, and her body followed, softening in small waves. The rain continued its rhythm. It did not rush her. It did not ask her to be better at resting. It simply stayed. There are nights when rest feels like something you must earn. Nights when you lie down and the mind keeps reaching for the list, for the memory, for the next thing to hold. But tonight, the rain made a different kind of night. A night where rest could arrive, without being invited, without being explained, without being deserved. She leaned back a little more. The chair received her, and in that quiet receiving, she felt something unfamiliar. Not achievement, not productivity, being held. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't even visible. It was simply the experience of not being the only one supporting herself, of letting the world, for once, do what it had always been capable of doing. Holding, the rain held the night in its steady sound. The cottage held warmth inside its walls. The candle held light in its small flame, and she was allowed to be held too. Nothing was asking anything of her now. The sentence returned again, like a gentle wave, repeating itself. Nothing was asking anything of her now. She didn't need to be strong in this moment. She didn't need to stay on guard. She didn't need to be the one who keeps going. The world could continue without her effort. The rain proved it. It fell and fell, patient and consistent, with no need for applause. She noticed how her body responded. When it believed that, her jaw softened again, her forehead smoothed, her hands became heavy in her lap, no longer lifted toward readiness. Even her thoughts began to slow, not because she chased them away, but because they had nothing to cling to here. The quiet did not ask her to fill it. The rain did not ask her to interpret it. The night did not ask her to carry it. She could simply be here, simply breathing, simply listening to the steady sound outside. A few drops struck the window with a slightly different rhythm and then blended back into the whole. Even variation was gentle tonight. Even change was soft. She felt the sense of being held deepen, not in a mystical way, not in a way that required belief, just in the simplest way possible. Something beneath her was steady. Something around her was safe. Something outside her was constant, and she did not have to do anything to make it so. Nothing was asking anything of her now. She let the words settle. She let the rain carry them, and slowly, like a body sinking into warm water, she allowed herself to trust the feeling, to trust the chair, to trust the room, to trust the night, to trust that for one evening, for one quiet stretch of rain, she could stop holding everything up. She could be held. Outside, the rain continued. Inside, the warmth stayed. And in the steady middle of it all, she rested. The rain did not stop. It did not slow to make a point. It did not grow louder to be noticed. It remained exactly as it was. Steady, reliable, unchanging. Outside, the night held its shape. Inside, the room stayed warm, and somewhere between the two, she felt a quiet understanding settle in. This didn't have to last forever. There was no promise being made, no vow for tomorrow, no plan for who she would be when morning came. This was only for one night, and that made it possible. For one night, she didn't have to be the strong one. For one night, she didn't have to anticipate what might be needed, didn't have to prepare for what might come, didn't have to keep herself upright just in case. The rain didn't ask her to decide anything beyond this moment. It simply kept falling, as if to say, "This is enough." She noticed how deeply her body responded to that idea. Not forever, just tonight. The muscles that still held a little tension finally understood they could rest. Her back eased further into the chair. Her legs grew heavier, supported without effort. Her breathing slowed again, stretching gently between each inhale and exhale. The rain continued its rhythm, soft and even. For one night, she didn't have to remember every role she carried. She didn't have to be capable, didn't have to be dependable, didn't have to be the one others leaned on. Those parts of her could sleep too. The room did not miss them. The night did not require them. The rain certainly did not. She let that truth sit quietly beside her. For one night, she could set strength down without worrying where it would land. It would still be there in the morning if she needed it. Strength did not disappear just because it rested. The rain seemed to understand this. It did not fall harder to prove itself. It did not stop to conserve energy. It simply existed in its own steady way, unconcerned with usefulness. She felt a small release in her chest then, not dramatic, not emotional, just the absence of effort, the feeling of not holding something she hadn't realized. She was still gripping. For one night, she didn't need to be impressive, didn't need to be resilient, didn't need to turn exhaustion into something noble. She could simply be tired, and that was allowed. The rain fell on, drop after drop, moment after moment. She noticed how her thoughts no longer tried to organize themselves. They drifted, instead, softly, without urgency. Some came and went without forming words. Others lingered briefly, then dissolved into the sound outside. The night did not demand clarity. It welcomed fog. It welcomed rest. For one night, she could trust that nothing would fall apart. If she stopped holding it together, the world outside the cottage did not collapse. The rain proved this again and again. It fell whether she listened or not. It fell whether she stayed awake or slept. It fell without needing her attention, and that was comforting. She shifted slightly, finding a position that required even less effort. The chair adjusted with her. The room adapted without complaint. Nothing resisted her rest. For one night, she didn't have to carry the invisible weight that usually followed her into sleep. She didn't have to replay conversations, didn't have to prepare responses, didn't have to brace for tomorrow. Tomorrow could wait. The rain did not belong to tomorrow. It belonged to now. Her eyelids grew heavier, not because she forced them closed, but because they no longer needed to stay open. The warm light softened further, edges blurring gently. The candle's glow became a quiet presence, rather than something to notice. Even the idea of herself began to feel less defined, not lost, just resting. For one night, she could be undefined. She could exist without effort, without explanation, without strength. The rain stayed. It did not mark the passing of time. It erased it. Moments blended into one another, smooth and unbroken. Her breathing found its own rhythm, slow and deep. In out. Each breath required less intention than the last. The night wrapped itself around her gently, like something familiar. For one night, she didn't have to be anything more than a body at rest in a quiet room with rain falling outside. That was enough. The rain seemed to agree. It continued, soft and constant, carrying the night forward without asking her to come along. And slowly, without announcement, without effort, she drifted closer to sleep, not as a goal, not as an achievement, just as the next natural thing. For one night, she didn't have to be strong. The rain would stay awake for her. The rain continues. It no longer sounds like individual drops. It has become one soft, steady presence, a gentle layer of sound that fills the night without asking to be noticed. Inside the room, nothing changes. The light stays warm, the air stays calm, the space stays safe. There is no moment that needs marking now, no sentence that needs finishing. Only the rain, only the breath, only the slow passing of time. In and out, the rain does not hurry you. It does not ask you to sleep. It does not ask you to relax. It simply stays. Your body understands this kind of staying. It responds without effort. The weight of your limbs grows familiar, comfortable, unimportant. Your shoulders rest where they are. Your hands remain heavy and still. There is nothing you need to adjust, nothing you need to do differently. The night has already made space for you. Outside, the rain continues its steady rhythm. Inside, your breath follows. In, out. Each breath arrives gently. Each breath leaves quietly. You do not need to guide it. You do not need to follow it. It knows where to go. The rain knows where to fall. Everything is doing exactly what it needs to do. You do not need to help. The thoughts that once asked for your attention no longer reach you. They drift past, soft and distant, like shapes behind the rain-blurred glass. You don't need to catch them. You don't need to understand them. They pass on their own. The night welcomes this kind of quiet. It welcomes the space between thoughts. It welcomes the soft pause where nothing is forming. Your breathing deepens slightly now. In, out. The rain remains unchanged. It does not fade away. It does not grow louder. It stays constant, as if it has always been here and will continue long after you rest. You are not required to listen. You are allowed to let the sound hold you, to let it blur the edges of awareness, to let it soften everything that still feels awake. The room no longer feels separate from the night. Inside and outside blend gently together. Warmth, darkness, sound, all moving slowly, all resting. Your body sinks a little deeper into the place beneath you, supported, held. Nothing presses against you. Nothing pulls at you. The night does not expect strength from you. It does not need effort. It does not need vigilance. You have done enough. The rain continues. Your breathing slows again. In, out. Longer now, easier. Each breath carries less weight. Each moment asks less of you. There is no need to stay aware. No need to follow the story. No need to hold on to the sound of my voice. You can let it fade into the rain. You can let everything fade into the rain. The night is wide enough to hold it all, safe enough to carry you, soft enough to receive you. You are safe. You are allowed to rest. Nothing is asking anything of you now. The rain will stay. The night will hold you. You may sleep. In, out, slower, softer. The rain continues. And you drift.